Alrighty, so we've got just a little bit after 6 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Valerie Newton. I'm the Director of Communications for Sampson County Schools. And tonight's Parent University session is about reading and literacy. Joining us tonight is our Director of Elementary Education, Ms. Nicole Peterson, and I am going to let her introduce our instructional coaches. So, Ms. Peterson, it's all yours.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I'm going to be rather brief. We have our team of instructional coaches from the elementary school level, so thank you for all of their effort into this presentation. We have Elena Williford, the lead district elementary coach, and then we have several school-based coaches, Amber Hall from Roseboro Elementary, Amy Foreman from Hargrove Elementary, Dana Allen from Hobton Elementary, Hannah Smith from Midway Elementary, and Felicia Lamb from Union Intermediate. I apologize if I missed someone. I hope I did not. I am currently on the move with my children, so if I did, my apologies. I'm going to hand this over to the coaches at this point. Thank you again.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to Parent University. This evening, we would like to share with you how reading is fundamental and ways to help your child with reading. I am Felicia Lamb from Union Intermediate School, and we hope that you find this presentation informative and feel free to add questions to the chat. So now we will get started. 3 questions we will answer that you may have been wondering about is why? Why the science of reading? The research is on how the human brain learns how to read. You may have heard a little bit about this coming home from some of your students or from teachers, but it is a process in which we are teaching children how to read. Also, the how. How we're going to teach the science of reading is with CKLA, and you may have heard of this from your teachers and your students as they come home, but CKLA is a curriculum that helps us teach kids how to read. And the what. What is letters? It's a professional development based on the science of reading research. Teachers are currently receiving this 2-year training at this time.
Our next slide has a short video that we're going to play for you that breaks down what the science of reading is.
What do we know about the complex process of learning to read? Surprisingly, a lot. Scientific research collected over the past 4 decades reveals what happens in the brain and what must happen in the classroom to enable skillful reading. Most children learn to walk and talk naturally without a lot of support from adults. But reading is different. Reading is not hardwired in the brain, and the neural pathways involved must be developed through successful instructional experiences. Let's look at the reading brain. The parts of the brain that allow us to process sounds and recognize visual images are already in place at birth in the left hemisphere. However, the phonological assembly region is not intact at birth. This is the part of the brain that allows us to connect speech sounds with visual images, such as letters, and enables reading. And it must be built through explicit, systematic phonics instruction and practice with decoding.
Hang on one second. We're having just a slight technical difficulty on my end, but hold. Okay, I think we're back on track, so we're going to go ahead to the next slide. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you just a little bit of information about the science of reading. I'm sure you've heard this used. It's very popular in education right now, but we're just kind of going to unpack some facts about the science of reading. As Felicia mentioned earlier, the science of reading is a body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. The research has been conducted over the last 5 decades across the world and is derived from thousands of studies conducted in multiple languages. It provides evidence to inform how proficient reading and writing develop. It explains why some have
Can you
difficulty.
check the lights, please? Oh, I'm sorry.
And the next thing that you're going to see is a short video about why the shift and why now. Why are we making this shift in education, and why is the instruction that your students are getting, why it looks a little bit different. The video that you're going to watch shows some data, and it's North Carolina based data. So this is just a little bit of information about why things are changing so that you can understand the why behind all of this. So just to give an explanation for the parents that are joined from their cell phone, this video just showed some North Carolina data, some research that shows that the instruction that we have been providing to our children is just not working. We have a lot of kids in North Carolina that are not proficient in reading. So now that we know better and our teachers are getting trained through letters, which is based on the science of reading research, we're taking the shift in Sampson County to ensure that your kids get the best possible reading instruction that we can provide. And now that we know better, we're going to try to do better and try to increase our reading proficiency through all the different things that we are training on, which is letters, and also implementing our new curriculum, which is CKLA.
Okay, on this next slide is a Science of Reading cheat sheet, and this is a resource for parents that we hope you'll find useful. On the first side of this sheet are some terms that you may hear, either from talking with teachers, or you may hear your kids coming home and saying some of these things. Things like heart words, phonemes, things of that nature. That's just a little way for you to know some of these terms and what they are. On the other side of that are some things that you can do at home to help your child. So through the research, we know that students need to be strong in decoding and language comprehension in order to comprehend. So we just have some things there for helping your child with decoding at home and for helping with the language comprehension. We put the link to this document in the chat. So if you want to copy that so that you can get a copy of it yourself, it is there for your use. And feel free to read over that and use it with your child at home.
So in the video that we just watched, one of the things they talked about was how spoken language has been around for so long that our brains are hardwired to learn to speak simply by being around others who speak. But we don't learn reading the same way. We have to be explicitly taught how to read. And one of the things that we do, one of the ways that we do that is through structured literacy. So in a classroom on a daily basis, these 5 components will be taught explicitly to your child. So that would be phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary fluency, and comprehension. And this is just kind of a quick overview of what their daily instruction will include. And we'll actually get into a few of those components as we move forward.
The science of reading research has shown that a child's brain needs to first know the different sounds in spoken language and then be able to connect these sounds to written letters and then blend the sounds to make words. This year, we're taking a sounds first approach, and this quote just kind of emphasizes why kids need to learn sounds first. If a child memorizes 10 words, the child can read 10 words. But if the child learns the sounds of 10 letters, the child can read 353 sound words, 4,324 sound words, 21,655 sound words.
What does science of reading look like in the classroom? We know that we need to have a structured sequential core curriculum that is heavy in phonics, and that is where CKLA comes in K3. We have a skills part of our instruction that is at least an hour of the instructional day for the kids in K3, well, K2. And then learning sounds, blends, phonemes, and more. This enables them to quickly decode any word they come across. We are using data to drive intervention, and we are giving them hands-on practice and repetition, which is very important.
So we start by working on, as Dana said, the sound first approach. We begin with letter sounds and literally just their sounds. With our new curriculum and the science of reading, that is what the research has proven works. And what that means is that we actually teach just their, like literally the letter sounds first. We don't actually associate the fact that the sound ah goes with and A. We show them the symbol, what an A actually looks like, and we teach them that that is the sound that represents that is A. It is not until about this time, as far as kindergarten is concerned, that we actually begin teaching them the letter sound correlation or correspondence. So teaching letter sounds has to be precise, as many of the sounds are similar and can easily be confused. Having basic letter sound knowledge in the classroom is essential to giving effective instruction and feedback. So here are some things that if you have a kindergartner especially, that they are going to be working on in the classroom. So some letters have more than one sound, like the vowels A, E, I, O, and U, and some consonants like C and G. And what I mean when I say that is that we're teaching them that not only does the A say A, but it can also say A in certain circumstances as we begin to teach them their phonics skills. Also, we teach them that the letters C and G have what we call hard and soft sounds. So a C can say K. It can also say S in some circumstances. Some letters make the same sound, like C and K, and we teach them the phonics rules that apply to help them know when there is a C, when there's a K, and when there is a C and a K together. Some letters make more than one sound depending on other letters that they are paired with. For instance, our digraphs. When we see a C and an H, we no longer say K. When we're sounding out a word, we now say ch. It makes its very own sound. So that is something else that your child in the early grades are beginning to learn. Some considerations for you at home is when working with your child, be conscious of how you say your letters. They learn what they hear. And I'll give you an example. For instance, when we say the sound for the letter C, we say K. Sometimes we say K. Especially where we are from, we like to say K, or like the T, instead of saying T, a very precise sound, we might say T. And that doesn't sound like it should be a big deal until your child starts to blend words together. And when they do that, if they think the C says K and the T says T, and when they go to sound out a word, they're going to say K at T if they're trying to sound the word out cat. And that can be a problem because when they go to blend that back together, which we'll talk about in just a second, they say K-at-ta. And that's not the same thing as K-at. Very precise sounds. That you can also probably see how that would also impact their writing. Because when they go to write, instead of just writing a C for K, they might write a C and a U, and then an A, and then a T and a U. So obviously that's very different. So like I said, in isolation, it may not sound like a big deal, but that is something that will actually help them in the long run if we can ensure that they are here. Every time they hear the sounds, they are very precise. We are working on that at school, but that is one way you can work with them at home. You can also utilize the video provided in the chat to hear the correct pronunciation of letter sounds. And I believe that was dropped in the chat just a second ago. So once we begin teaching letter sounds and just focusing on the sounds, we move into what we call phonics. So once we begin to apply the sound knowledge that we have to our written language. So phonics is a method of learning to read. Phonics works by breaking words up. We call that segmenting, if you've ever heard your child say that, into their individual sounds and then pushing them back together, and we call that blending. So for instance, when a child is trying to read words on a page, when the word is decodable, which means it can be sounded out in order to know what the word is saying, we ask them to sound out. So if I'm doing cat, we would ask them to say k, at. And then we ask that's that segmenting, right? We broke it apart. Then we ask them to blend it back together, cat, so that they can fluently read what is in front of them. Phonics work includes word patterns, different spelling rules, phonics rules, and then tricky words, which we'll also talk about in just a second. So many of you, if you have had children come through the school system prior to this year, one of the things you're probably used to is hearing about sight words. You know, your child might come home with a list of sight words. They might have a couple a week, and they're supposed to memorize them, and that's really all you do with them. The science of reading has a significant amount of research proving that we no longer need to just force children to memorize sight words. We need them to essentially in the long run memorize with more of an understanding. So what they have done is broken up these sight word lists that we've had for years into two categories. We have a decodable category and we have a tricky word category. So for the, if it is a decodable word, that means that I can teach a phonics skill that will help you sound out that word. If you get to that word while you're reading and you just completely blank and you go, I don't remember what that word was. I learned it, I memorized it, but I don't remember what it was. You actually have something to pull from in order to figure that out. So for instance, one of the words on all of those sight word lists is the word like, which yes, eventually we should memorize it. We should know it from memory because it is a word that you're going to see very often. However, if I come across that word when I'm reading and I forget because all I've done is memorize, what I can do is pull from some of those phonics skills that my teacher has taught me. So for instance, once I have taught a student that they their long vowels with their silent E's, then they know when they get to that word that they can figure out that it says like, even without having had it memorized. So those are decodable words. Then we have tricky words. Now we do have about 4% of our English language are considered tricky words, which are words that do not follow any regular phonics pattern. And so we are working on teaching children ways to look at the word and figuring out what part of the word is the heart part, which is kind of in the phonics cheat sheet that was talked about a second ago. We look at heart words. So we're showing children how to recognize the part of the word that is tricky, so to speak, that just doesn't follow any normal phonics pattern. For instance, the word said. When we see an A and an I, when we teach children about an A and an I, we teach them that those are two vowels together. So the A says A and the I is basically silent. So if I followed that when I read that word, I would say said, and that doesn't make sense. So we teach them that that A and that I is their heart part, and that is the part that they have to remember that's just tricky. There is no real pattern or phonics skill that we can teach them for that. So we're ultimately, yes, children need to know these words from memory. We're also trying to teach them the skills that they need to recognize when they see a phonics pattern and when they can decode the word, even if it is a sight word, so to speak, that we are used to, that we're used to teaching in the past. And letter formation. So another thing we're working on in the early grades is their letter formation, and that has not changed in the sense of, you know, we practice that, but the way in which we're doing it through the science of reading and with CKLA is a little bit different. So before having students hold a writing tool, we've been having students practice pre-writing motor skills. They have found that this has been beneficial. So really just working on controlling the arm, moving from left to right, working on the terms counterclockwise, clockwise, top, bottom. So we do a lot of what we call air drawing in the classroom with our arms out to work on just those formations before we actually put pencil to paper. When we're writing letters, children learn to write individual letters. They need to know the direction of the lines. So some of the verbiage that we use in the classroom is up, down, clockwise, counterclockwise, diagonal. At the beginning of the year, especially in kindergarten, we focused a lot on those line formations. So we just learned what a diagonal line looks like, what a up and down line looks like, what it means to go clockwise and counterclockwise. And then what we're doing is now associating those patterns and those formations to actual letters. So we might use a curved line and a straight line to do a lowercase a. And so that's kind of the verbiage that we use in the classroom. So we thought that would be beneficial for you to have when you're working with your child at home. How can you help at home? You can ensure the students are using correct letter formation when doing homework at home. If they make mistakes, have them go back and correct those mistakes so that they're not repeatedly doing it incorrectly. And this will help with their proficiency in writing in the classroom.
So interventions. In Sampson County, we use an MTSS framework, which is a multi-tiered system of support. And what this means is that students who need help are able to get it through things like small intervention groups. So we take intervention groups for our developing readers So these are often children whose score are below or well below proficient on their M-Class DIBELS test, and they get placed into a small intervention group. This small group of students is pulled in addition to regular class time. So they have their regular reading time. And then in addition to that, these students would get an additional intervention group time to get support where they need it. We use M-Class intervention kits, which is a program that we use that is based off of our DIBELS measure, which is our test we give all of our kids 3 times a year. And this helps us determine where they might have reading strengths or reading difficulties. And with those that have reading difficulties, we use that information and pull them in a group. So they may have phonics issues. They may need help with blending and decoding. And so they will go into a small group of kids who need help in those things so they can get more concentrated support. If your child is in an intervention group, you should get a letter that's sent home that says, hey, your child is getting extra support in these areas. This is what you need to know, and this is what you need to do. We just did MOY, or we're doing MOY right now. So anybody who maybe, if you didn't get one at BOY and your child needs one, you might get it at the end of this month, beginning of February. And if you didn't get a letter, then that most likely means that your child is doing well in reading.
Ms. Williford, for those that are listening, could you please tell us what BOY and MOY mean, just in case they aren't aware?
Yes. So BOY is beginning of the year, which is our beginning of the year test, and MOY is our middle of the year test, and then we also do an EOY, which is end of year test. So our DIBELS assessment is given those 3 times a year. We do it in both reading and math, but today we're talking about reading. So those are the 3 times that we do that. And if you want to know more information about literacy or the fun literacy things that we have going on in our classrooms and our schools across the county, please feel free to join our Sampson County Schools Literacy Leaders Facebook page. We try to post pictures of things. We would love if you would submit a picture through the messenger of your child reading, and we would post them. If you just give us their first name and their grade level and the school they're in, you can just shoot a message of your child reading or enjoying a literacy project, and we would be love to feature them on our page.
Thank you very much for sharing a lot of really good and important information with our families tonight from our instructional coaches. I did want to let those that are listening, if you were not able to see the slides, I will have this presentation posted on our website, our county website, which is sampson.k12.nc.us. That will be posted there tomorrow. And we'll also have a video recording posted as well. So if you need to go back and listen to the information that was shared again and try to decipher some of the things that they were talking about, because I know it's a lot of really heavy content to hear it the first time around, we'll have that listed and posted up there for you also. We will have this session again tomorrow night, but it will be in Spanish. So if you know any of our families that would like to join tomorrow for the Spanish session, please encourage them to do so. The link can be found on our district website under the Parent Resources tab, and the link can also be found on the Sampson County Schools Facebook page. And if there are any questions from those that are in attendance, now would be a great time to ask. You can just unmute your microphone, or you can place your question in the chat box. And we'll give a couple minutes or about 30 seconds or so for any questions to come up, and let our instructional coaches answer those. And it looks like Dion Mathis. Go ahead. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. How are you? So I did get into the session late, and I do apologize for that. I know that a lot of what we talked about tonight was about maybe the newer kids coming in. I was wondering, as far as like the EOG testing, like the 3rd grade and up, how is this affecting them, and where the schools are reporting that academically for them.
So let me see if I let me make sure I understand your question first of all. Hi, Dion. How are you doing? Hadn't seen you a little bit. Second of all, are you asking, like, are you saying how can we help kids who are like EOG age?
Yes, yeah, basically. And, you know, I'm concerned because a lot of our kids, well, especially one of our children, is in third grade and he's falling behind and the school's falling behind. And maybe this isn't the time and the place for that question.
So I can say, I'm not sure with your specific question, but I can say that we have got a lot of new things this year. Do you mind muting it because we're getting feedback? Oh, thank you. So we just implemented a new curriculum that is a much stronger curriculum than what we had before. Like Dana had started out, when we know better, we can do better. And letters was just implemented, and the coaches were very lucky. Most of us got to do letters first last year, so we've already got a year behind us. It's a 2-year program that helps us know how to better help our students, and the teachers are getting it too. So we were able to pick a curriculum that was aligned with letters and how to teach reading. And a lot of what we see out of children in grades 3, 4, and 5 that struggle with the EOGs and struggle with those things, it is because they don't have those basic reading skills, which is why we're going back and, like, for example, those intervention groups. Those intervention groups are not just for lower level kids, they're for children in all grade levels. So making sure any child who's struggling, even if they're in the 3rd or 4th grade, if they're struggling, they're getting in that intervention group, they're getting that extra assistance. We're helping meet them where they're at in those small groups in order to prepare them to be strong readers. We also, for 3rd grade, have a multitudes of options and things that we do because of Read to Achieve law. And we could probably do an entire Read to Achieve session. There's so much in that. But I'm sure that if you reached out to your specific school, I know your babies are at Roseboro and Amber is the instructional coach there and things like that. She knows more specifically, but they have got a phenomenal things going on as far as Read to Achieve stuff, all the items that they've put in place to make sure that their kids are being successful in the future. And as far as at home, really, honestly, I'll tell you, one of the best things that you can do to just help them is, especially in 3rd grade, have them read. Have them read to you, have them read to siblings, and honestly, have them read anything and everything. And that, as far as that goes, that's the best way I can answer it without it being a very specific nitty gritty into specific situations. But like I said, if you have more specific things, reach out to your school. They have people there I know who are happy and willing to help and answer things.
Yeah, perfectly. That's exactly what I was looking for. I just, with the new curriculum changing, I just wanted to confirm. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I need. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm so glad I could answer that for you.
Can you hear me right now? Because I wanted to kind of extend that for a second. This is Ms. Peterson.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming that you guys can.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I was just going to expand on that a little bit and just say that the state does not mandate that we provide the screener for 4 or 5, but we do that. So the same Dibbles assessment that is given to K3, we assign that to 4 or 5, and we purchase that for our students, and that screens them as well. And so if you're wanting the nitty gritty, the specifics of that MOY assessment would really, really, really help you. And what we've learned from letters is basically how to diagnose more the problems we see with our students in early literacy, and that extends into upper elementary as well. So again, like Elena said, reach out to the school, have some discussions with them. They can provide the data, but a lot of that rolls back to that we do understand that we need to provide these interventions to students, even in the upper grade levels, knowing that we definitely have deficits from COVID as well.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson and Ms. Willerford, for answering that question for Mr. Mathis. Do we have any other questions out there? Okay, well, if not, then we're going to go ahead and end the session for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being in attendance. If you do have a specific question that you want to ask that's more personal, like Ms. Peterson said and Ms. Williford said, please reach out to the instructional coaches at your child's school or your child's teacher first, and they will be glad to provide those answers for you. And if there's nothing else, then we will go ahead and end the call. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful night.